The surgeons worked with an eerie robotic precision. Very few words were uttered. The toggling beeps and blips of the monitors chirped musically in the operating room. Not much longer now, until Kate awakens from the anesthesia. And when she does, she'll look in a mirror and stare straight into a gorgeous honey brown eye she's never seen before. Her new eye. Just 2 weeks ago, Kate Amherst, an established wedding photographer, suffered a severe blow to the head during a terrible car accident. A distracted driver had run a red light and slammed right into the side of her car in an intersection. But she survived, virtually unscathed. Her only lasting injury was the total loss of vision in her left eye. She was lucky, and her story caught the attention of ARC Innovation Labs, who offered her the opportunity to become one of their first human eye transplant recipients, at no cost to her. It all seemed too good to be true. All she had to do was sign a few waivers and wait by the phone for the news that they'd found the right donor. And that anonymous donor came unexpectedly quick. Though the organ wouldn't match her natural ocean blue eye, Kate was grateful for the chance to regain her vision and move on with her life. She was scheduled for surgery within the next few days. It required a few proprietary procedures, but it was a complete success. After the operation, they explained that she needed to keep her left eye covered for at least a week while it healed. After that, they removed the bandages, and she was told to use both of her eyes together as much as possible to make sure they were fully calibrated. But Kate found the process very overwhelming and uncomfortable. During her recovery, she experiences an unexpected side effect. She's been having strange dreams almost nightly. The dreams had eventually become intense and terrifying, and they soon haunted her in her waking life. Kate began to realize she could only see these nightmares in her new brown left eye. If she closes the eye, there's nothing there. But viewing through it, she can see things augmented into her reality. Eventually, she could even hear it. Sometimes, it would be a strange distortion of her reflection in the mirror. Sometimes, a dog or cat on the street would run past her that wasn't really there. But more and more frequently, there's a man following her wherever she goes. He follows her closely through the bus station or through the grocery store. He even stalks her outside of her own home at night. But no one else can see him but her. And even if he brushes by her, they never touch. It's as if her donated eye was a portal to a ghostly world that she couldn't control or close. Eager to get back to work, Kate wrote down a list of concerns she would bring up to her doctor at her next checkup. As expected, the doctor suggests that what she's experiencing is most likely due to trauma, mixed with floating material and remnants from the surgery. They begged her to continue to use both of her eyes at all times and continue to check in. The side effects would dissipate soon. Kate just tried to put it all out of her mind. Feeling isolated and at a loss for relief, she looks into who the man might be. Of all the things she had been through over the last few weeks, he was what scared her the most. It was his relentlessness. She could never escape him. Kate tried looking for him on social media and public records, and even browsed through the mugshots on the Echo City Jail website. She couldn't find anything about the man anywhere, but she swears she's never seen him before. That night in bed, while trying to settle in and forget the whole thing for a bit, she hears a clamor in the hallway just outside her closed bedroom door. Kate is certain someone has broken into her apartment. Reaching for the baseball bat in the corner of her room that she uses for protection, she misjudges how far away it is in the dark and accidentally smacks it to the floor. The sounds outside her door suddenly stop. She doesn't hear any more footsteps. Hopefully, they got spooked and just left. As she reaches for her phone to dial 911, 3 loud bangs on the door shake the room. She can hear the door handle twist and turn, and she's so glad she locked it that night. But was it just another hallucination? What if it wasn't? The operator rushes Kate for her information, and Kate hurries to provide it. She shouts into the phone, afraid the operator can't hear her over the chaos inside the apartment. Kate asks if she can hear the banging, but the operator hears nothing but Kate's frantic wails.
Is someone there with you?
Kate makes the hasty decision to open the door. The dispatcher on the phone begs her not to, but Kate wants to know who is on the other side of all this. She was delirious and angry about how tired and scared she was. She tossed the phone down on the bed and slowly crept up to the door.
Ma'am?
The operator could be heard pleading faintly as she walked away.
For the police, what is your address?
She gripped the door handle of her bedroom and unlocked it, gripping the baseball bat in the other hand. She swung open the door and got ready to swing the bat. But there was nothing there, just a dark, silent hallway. She breathed a sigh of relief. But solace came too soon. A tall, dark, hooded figure slid into view from the left of the door. She was horrified, but instinctually swung towards it, hitting the wall instead. But he was still there, grabbing at her viciously, yet, as usual, never making contact. Kate realized he may not actually be in the apartment with her. She closed her brown eye and found that he completely disappeared. Opening it caused his shadowy shape to reform and come back into focus. The man huffed, nearly snarling. But for the first time, he makes himself known to her. He reached up slowly towards his head and removed his hood, looking straight into her eyes. She looked him over, trying to find some kind of identifying features, anything that might ring a bell for her as to where she knew him from. He was covered in tattoos all over his face and neck. A few letters, words, and images were legible. She committed them to memory. They both stood silently looking at each other, knowing neither one could physically affect the other.
Ma'am, please come back to me.
Eventually,
I need to know where you are.
she remembered the poor 911 operator waiting for her to return to the phone. She glanced back into the bedroom and then back at the man, who was gone, no matter what eye she looked through. Finally, she was going to get some answers. She went to the Echo City police station the next morning to file a report with the description of her stalker. She didn't know how to explain it to them, but she felt like she needed to tell the police about the man, even if he was just a ghost. If the doctors couldn't make her feel better, maybe the law could make her feel safer. The police took her report, but told her there was absolutely nothing they could do for her. On her way out, defeated, Kate found herself captivated by the amount of missing posters carpeting the wall near the entrance. Her eyes danced across the faces of men, women, and beautiful little girls and boys, lost to the darkness of the city. A woman's arm cut into her line of sight and stapled a new poster in the dead center of the sea of faces. A smiling young woman stared back at her. She looked familiar somehow. Written on the poster was, Missing Stacia Wallace, 20 years old. Last seen wearing blue jeans and a green top. Possible abduction for trafficking. How heartbreaking, Kate thought to herself. Kate looks over to the older woman who stapled the poster, longing to see hope in her eyes. But the woman looked completely shattered and disassociated.
We've been looking for her for a month.
The woman says weakly. They caught each other's eye. The woman's melted consciousness suddenly refires, triggered by something, and she appears to wake up from her dreamlike state. She drops her plastic stapler, which clattered loudly onto the floor. Her hands reach for Kate's face, who understandably reacts defensively.
No, wait.
The woman pleads.
Your eyes. Oh my God, your eyes.
Kate gulps hard and wishes she had just gone straight home.
I'm sorry.
Kate says politely, though disturbed.
My daughter, Stacia. She has eyes like yours. At least this one.
The woman caresses the brow above Kate's left eye, and Kate struggles to keep a tear from slipping out of it. The woman pokes the portrait of Stacia on the wall with her finger, not looking away from Kate.
It's just like hers. It's like she's looking right at me.
Don't know what to say. I'm just so sorry.
Kate wriggles away from the woman awkwardly, who is finally able to get a grip on herself.
I just miss her so much. I want her home.
I hope you find her.
Kate reiterates sympathetically. She throttles through the police station doors, leaving the poor woman alone with her grief. Kate tried to carry on with her day, running errands and constantly looking over her shoulder. She caught up with emails on the bus, looking forward to getting medically cleared to drive. At least then, she could bawl helplessly to herself in private again. She finally makes it to her stop and is the only rider to get off. It's nearly sundown, and she's still got a block to walk before she's home. Hunched under the street lamp she's walked by day after day was a man in a black hooded sweatshirt. He looks lost in his phone, illuminating his heavily tattooed face. Her stomach sinks, and her heart flutters. It's the man she's been seeing for weeks, haunting her entire life. Out of habit, she looks with her brown eye. As always, she sees him. She closes it and looks only with her own blue eye. But he's still there. It's really him, in the flesh. She pulls out her phone to prepare to call the police, but the light of the phone screen catches his attention. He looks up curiously at first, but then starts to look more resolute. It's as if he's been waiting for her all day. He starts to walk towards her. She's not too far from her apartment building. She can make it if she runs fast enough. But he was faster than she anticipated. He chased her voraciously. She climbed the few steps of the stoop that led up to her apartment building and had just placed her hand on the handle of the door when he gripped her arm and forcefully ripped her away from it. With all of her might, she pushed him away from her, throwing him off balance. He stepped backward down the short flight of steps and stopped right at the bottom. In the dim light of the street lamps, Kate could see bewilderment in his eyes. He reached toward his back, not quite able to grab what he was reaching for. Kate had become so accustomed to his spectral presence that she didn't even think to run, even now that he had finally caught her. He grunted and winced, and finally stumbled forward, face first, into the cement steps at Kate's feet. Behind the man stood the woman from the police station, Stacia Wallace's mother. In her trembling hand is a long, sharp knife, blood dribbling from the sharp tip. In mortified shock, she looks up at Kate, whose pretty brown eye glinted in the warm haze of the streetlights. They were both lost for words, but after considering all the clues from the scene before her, Kate was finally able to piece together the outlandish truth about the man in her dreams and her new eye.
Give me the knife, Miss Wallace. It's okay.
Kate begs carefully, reaching for the woman's crimson-coated hand. She peers up and down the street for possible witnesses.
I don't know what happened. I just saw him coming for you, and I had to stop him.
The woman buckles under the weight of what she's just done, her crumpling body slowly descending toward the street below her.
Just give me the knife and I'll take care of it, I promise.
Kate urges.
I'm sorry. I had to follow you. I had to know if it was true, if my daughter was in there somewhere, and then I saw him, and I just couldn't let him put his hands on her again. I know it's her inside of you, inside your head. It's Stacia. I just know it. I couldn't let them take her again.
It's okay. I've already gone to the police about this guy.
No.
I'll deal with them, somehow. Just go home, okay? I'm so sorry.
Kate fails to resist her overwhelming need to bend down and embrace the woman.
No, I need to. Thank you for this. It's done, isn't it? She's gone, isn't she?
The woman is nearly reduced to rubble on the sidewalk. Kate comforts her the best she can.
Thank you for never giving up on her. You saved me. You saved us.
That night, a monster was taken off the streets of Echo City. A chapter was ended, and a second chance at a new life began.
Why do I have to come down here every time, Chucky? I hate it down here. It stinks, Chucky.
A portly man in a dapper striped suit complains of the stench amongst his agreeable company.
I'm sorry, Mr. Black.
Reggie Black is best known as the Ghost in the crime world, and he's the most elusive criminal in town. He operates from the shadows of Echo City, and his schemes are executed flawlessly each time. Black was quiet, careful, and suspicious of everyone and everything. Much to his chagrin, this paranoia has deprived him of the spotlight he's always desired, but it's also kept him out of police custody. Tonight, the Ghost is coming out of the dark to settle some business with a local bootlegger, Chucky Warner. And he's not alone. No, he's never alone. He's always got at least 10 men with him to watch his back and keep the cops off his trail. It's never been any skin off their nose to bruise up a few uniforms or threaten a few wives. No one could even get close to him. Black's scattered crew shifts threateningly in their spots around a small back room of the speakeasy. Mr. Warner submits to his demands and reaches under his desk to produce a leather sachet. From it, he pulls a few bundles of cash, tossing it out on the desk so the feeding frenzy can begin. The Ghost's men yank the money up and shove it into their jackets, not even bothering to count it.
I'll see you next month, old boy.
Black ensures. And just as silently as they descended upon the speakeasy that night, the Ghost and his men vanished into the thin air of the streets without another word. Meanwhile, somewhere across town, something big was brewing. Sketches, playing cards, burnt pieces of paper, long-dead, long-stemmed flowers, and hundreds of feet of rope littered the water-damaged wooden floorboards of a musty upstairs apartment. Hair dye stained the sink, and stale half-eaten sandwiches were the only decorative objects to be found. As white, fluffy rodents flailed against each other inside small metal cages, a frail figure was hunched in a corner, its head braced against the wall. A fluttering noise emitted softly from its core. It was murmuring under its ragged breath.
Alakazam. Hocus pocus. Open sesame.
8 months later, Black and his gang had a close call during a run-in with law enforcement. A shootout between the two resulted in the loss of his cousin and business partner Frank, and many more casualties on the other side. He was somehow spared even a single night in jail, but he knew it would only be a matter of time. Soon they would realize that behind most of the triggers pulled in Echo City was likely one of his men, and when that time came, it would mean curtains for Black. But until then, to ease his stress, Black decided to indulge in one of his favorite pastimes and attend a magic show being held at the biggest theater in town. Situated in a quiet seat on the mezzanine floor, surrounded by his cronies as usual, he settled in, barking at them to pipe down as the show began.
Break it up, you goobs.
He had been looking forward to this show all month, and he didn't want to miss a single moment. A premier magician, the amazing Henry, was about to take to the big stage for the first time, and Black wanted to be one of the first to see him in person. Black loved magic. More specifically, he loved trying to figure out how the illusionist does the tricks. He's convinced if things had gone another way, he could have been one of the greatest showmen in the world. But he instead answered the call to a lifetime of crime. A large, white plume of smoke exploded dramatically at center stage, and a man was seemingly conjured from within it. As the fog dissipated, he spread his arms wide open to receive the audience, who clapped politely, as any new acquaintance would upon meeting a new friend.
Not bad,
Black declared. The handsome, mustached magician, fitted in a gorgeous tuxedo and top hat, smiled luminously, reaching into thin air and producing a beautiful, vibrant, long-stemmed red rose. He tossed it to a well-dressed lady in the front row. The women swooned and the men rolled their tired eyes. Black chuckled to himself.
Oh boy, we've got a real ham on our hands.
He may not have been duped by the tricks, but he was quickly free-falling into the escape. The amazing Henry removes his hat from on top of his head and tips it forward to the audience, not only showing respect, but showing that there was nothing inside of it. His eyes twinkle, and he swishes the top hat upside down in a circular motion with his fingers wiggling fluidly over it. He projected his voice so that everyone could hear as he spoke.
And now, I shall produce a shocking, terrible, awesome creature from my hat. Prepare yourselves, ladies, and gentlemen, gird your loins.
The audience laughed nervously as the magician reached his hand carefully and slowly into the big black hat, his arm reaching impossibly deep into it. Finally, he seemed to have found something. The amazing Henry struggled as he pulled up what he'd caught, his face strained and stressed as he peered out into the audience. Then suddenly emerged a large, white, adorable, fluffy bunny rabbit. Its nose wiggled and it whipped unsteadily from the scruff it was held by. The audience was tickled, and Henry placed the rabbit in a bin near the back of the stage. Reggie Black was beginning to regret his decision to get dressed up for this low-effort amusement. The amazing Henry did multiple card tricks, simple feats in sleight of hand, and even managed to make a white dove shoot out of his overly flexible magic wand.
What a crock!
Black said aloud for many people to hear. His voice reverberated against the gilded walls. Unfazed, the magician continued.
And now, my lovely assistant Glenda will help me with my next couple of tricks.
A gorgeous woman in a breathtaking sequin leotard shimmied and shimmered from just off stage, dazzling the crowd and livening up the performance.
Finally, something worth watching,
Black said, his men giggling in agreement. As the amazing Henry commenced with this captivating performance with Glenda, Black's boys hooted and hollered from the mezzanine, causing others in attendance to peer up at them to pass along their silent judgment of the disruption. The amazing Henry looks up and spots Reggie Black, tucked comfortably among his posse. Henry smiles and winks at the man, and Black nods back, tipping his hat. A look of gears shifting in his mind wrenched in his face. The amazing Henry seemed to have an idea.
I've got a stupendous favor to ask one of our guests, if I may.
Henry addressed the whole crowd en masse, stopping the show for a moment.
You, sir, with the smart striped suit on, would you mind coming down and helping me perform my final trick?
The theater was silent. Glenda looks confused, as if disappointed she may not be performing their hardest trick of the night. Black looked around at everyone else, who were looking back at him in silence, anticipating his answer. He had no choice but to oblige the man's request. He's never backed down to anyone calling him out, much less a harmless magician.
Boss, don't do it.
One of his best men said to him under his breath.
Yeah, just let it go. This guy's a chump. A nobody.
Another one said. But the hot, warming lights bathing the thick velvet valances called to him. The dirt and dust left behind from decades of great men showcasing their talents swirled invincibly on the floor of the stage. He could have been one of those greats. He could have been the greatest entertainer to have ever lived. And now, he's given the chance to show everyone what real talent looks like. He slowly stands up on his feet, his men following suit.
No, I got this, boys.
There were stars in his eyes. He readjusted his jacket and made his way down the hallway to the stage area, accompanied by an usher, who was not sure what to make of the change in the program. Black was now in the wings, and the stage looked a lot bigger up close than he imagined. The amazing Henry beckoned him forward with a giant smile and raised eyebrows, hoping he wouldn't back out now that he's gone through the trouble.
Oh, don't worry, sir. You're in good hands, I can assure you.
The amazing Henry shakes Black's hand forcefully, making meager eye contact. Henry glances at Glenda, hoping she steps in to gracefully help Mr. Black onto the stage. She skips towards the Echo City Kingpin and leads him by the arm to the center of the stage. Black smiles, but his mouth has gone dry. He looks into the crowd, their faces obstructed by the bright lights, pouring into his eyes like they were buckets. He tries to locate his seat where all of his men would be sitting. They look utterly flabbergasted that he's actually on stage.
And who do we have here?
He asks the audience more so than Black.
Reggie.
He stands there waiting for that magic moment when his charm will turn on.
Ah, Reggie. Very good. A strong name, Reggie. Now, would you be so kind as to stand right there for a moment while I bring out the vessel?
The amazing Henry speaks in a darkened, ominous tone suddenly. Glenda's eyes seem to sink further into her skull as well.
The vessel?
Black says, frozen in place.
Oh, you're not afraid of a little magic, are you? Someone like you must not be afraid of much, I presume.
An easy presumption, I'm sure.
Reggie replies, becoming more and more uneasy. He can feel his feet tracking backward on their own to whence he came. Glenda grabs him gently and pulls him back to the center of the stage. Henry flees briefly, and swiftly returns with a large pine box, resting on a cloth-covered table on wheels. It rumbles and squeaks towards Reggie like some sort of portable grave.
You're gonna put me in there?
Reggie quakes. The crowd chides and jeers at the crumbling man. Reggie looks helplessly up at the mezzanine, a haunting silence discovered.
Come now, you'll be quite comfortable. You're the perfect size, I'm sure.
The amazing Henry tries to soothe his distrust by conjuring a joker card from Reggie's lapel, shoving it gently into his chest pocket.
I'll need that back later, Reggie, so know that this isn't goodbye.
Goodbye?
Reggie asks. Henry ignores his inquest as he and Glenda offered to help him into the box, but he didn't want to look like a daisy. He carefully climbed the short metal steps and reclined inside. After struggling with the idea of laying inside a coffin-shaped container, Reggie was nearly sent over the edge when the amazing Henry inlays a lid on top. The magician's sinister sneer was visible for only just a moment before complete darkness enveloped him. A metallic click was heard from somewhere inside the box.
And now, for my final illusion. The, relentless Reggie will participate in my greatest trick yet. The vessel. I will be transporting Reggie into another dimension where horrors and calamity await him. Where the past, present, and future collide. And what is wrong will be made right again.
Black's gang starts to stir in the mezzanine and shouts begin to fall upon the ignoring crowd. Some of them dash away towards the stage area, but they would be too late.
No! Wait, hey! Let me out of here, or else!
Reggie could just barely be heard, his voice muffled inside the vessel. He can't get out. He's locked in tight.
Let me out of here!
Glenda's eyes sparkle and appear to tear up as she poses next to the master magician.
And now,
the amazing Henry proclaims immaculately.
It's time for you, Reginald Black, to disappear!
No!
Just then, a damp explosion emits from inside the pine box, and a mist of blue smoke spills from the sides of the lid. Henry smiles excitedly, and with great flourish and prestige, gathers himself behind the box, lifting the lid away and pushing the empty crate onto the floor. It crashes and splinters to pieces. Reggie Black was nowhere to be found. He had vanished into thin air. Everyone was aghast. They had never seen anything like it before. They applaud and give a standing ovation. Though they didn't know the man as the ghost, they could sense that a great black shadow had been evanesced in the spotlights before their very eyes. Black's men bottlenecked in the wings of the stage, not sure what to do or where to go. Where had he gone? Where was he taken? What had they done to him?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on this amazing night, sharing this special moment with all of you Echo City citizens. Safe travels.
He and Glenda disappear into the darkness backstage, but not before winking and nodding to Black's boys, who were snarling like hungry hyenas. The next morning, Newspaper pages crinkled and crackled excitedly in the streets. Right on the front page was a photo of the empty vessel, with a grainy mugshot of Reggie the Ghost Black nestled in the corner. A Joker card peeked out of the top of his front pocket. The headline read, "Hero Cop Nabs Crime Boss in Sting Operation. A magic moment for Echo City."
Baseball-printed curtains swayed in the suburban evening breeze. The open window let in the sounds of bored, barking dogs, the fresh, cool air, and hopefully soon, one of the most elusive creatures known to man. Jackson Curtis was strong-willed, sharp, and curious. He was also one of the last sixth graders at his school to lose all of their baby teeth. Earlier that day, he took a hit from a dodgeball right to the face on the playground. He reached into his mouth and gingerly pulled out a pearly, jagged tooth. He couldn't contain his excitement. While his classmates were disturbed by his jubilation, Jackson knew he was just granted the perfect bait for his next great pursuit. Although it was something the other kids poked fun at him for, Jackson saw it as an opportunity to do something no one else in the world had. He was going to catch the Tooth Fairy. Now that he had what he needed to lure her straight to him, he needed to set the perfect trap. His parents were made aware of the covert operation, and they humored him by promising privacy and their full cooperation. He spent all afternoon devising the plan, and he finished up just as the night fell. He grabbed his flashlight, candy, and his prized Polaroid camera. Taking his position on the closet floor behind its nearly closed door, he began his quiet watch for any sign of the fairy in the flesh. Next to him, he dumped out his cache of sugary treats to keep him up all night, and the wrappers piled up as the hours went by. He was worried she might not show. Maybe she was more clever than he realized. Just as he was about to call it a night, Jackson finally saw something. Through the slim opening of his closet door, he saw a long shadow sweep over the floor of his bedroom. He couldn't hear any footsteps or the beating of tiny wings as he anticipated. He crept closer to the door and closed one eye to focus the other as he peered out into the dimly lit room. Suddenly, he got visual confirmation. She glided into his line of sight, and he reared back away from the door in terror. The fairy wasn't at all what he expected. She was at least 8 feet tall as her head nearly touched the ceiling. She had large, black, monstrous wings that spanned half of the room, though they didn't flutter or keep her afloat. She seemed to levitate altogether. Her bony bare feet dragged lightly across Jackson's hardwood floors, and the scraping unnerved him. As she entered the warm glow of his nightlight, he noticed the luminous, shimmering green hue of her face. A fine, blue, sparkling mist surrounded her, collecting inside of her skeletal body cavities and expelling from her wings in an endless cycle. Every time she moved or twisted, her bony joints creaked and popped. Her long, bat-like ears protruded out and away from her head, and on top of that head was long, black, coarse feather-like hair. Her teeth were small, sharp, and fanged, and her tongue flicked devilishly behind them. From her wide mouth, dark red stringy fluid dribbled down her chin and leaked onto her rough, spiky body below. The crimson goo spilled across the porous landscape of her bones and seemed to leach and disappear somewhere inside of her. It was like she was wearing a suit of burnt white armor. From what would she need all this protection, Jackson wondered. But she was there, slinking around the corners of his room, sniffing and lapping at the air with her red-stained tongue. There was only one thing she could have been trying to find: the delicate tooth waiting for her underneath his pillow. Jackson hoped his decoy basketball head would fool the giant fairy. As terrified as he was, he couldn't abort the mission. He was going to catch her no matter what. She extended her bony hand toward the bed, salivating. What does she do with all the teeth anyhow, Jackson wondered to himself. But he had to stay focused and ask questions later. She slipped her crackling hand under the pillow with a grace so supernatural that it didn't disturb the covers or the wig-covered basketball. She seemed to have found what she was looking for, but her head suddenly tilted to the side, seemingly suspicious of something. Had she heard him? Jackson imagined her long ears probably had impeccable hearing. He had to be quick and silent. He gathered his camera and flashlight and prepared to ambush the ancient creature. But when he looked back out into the bedroom, he couldn't see her. How could he have lost sight of such a massive monster so quickly? He feared she had already done her business and left as quietly as she came.
You are supposed to be sleeping, little boy.
A guttural swarm of words flowed out from somewhere in the room. The voice sounded neither young nor old, neither living nor dead. It was like the piercing, resonant shriek of a raven. Jackson resisted the urge to shout for his mom and dad in the other room. He had to be brave. He had to finish the mission and prove to those kids at school that she was real. Armed with his camera, flashlight, and heaps of sugar coursing through his veins, he defiantly emerged from the closet. His slippered feet stumbled clumsily toward the center of his bedroom. He looked around, trying to locate the looming aberration. Then he hears her, right behind him. Her serrated teeth chattered in his ears. Dust and debris flung from her blood-caked mouth and landed right on top of his head like a macabre flurry of bone snow. Her powerful jaw pulverizes his last baby tooth into powder.
And why are you out of bed, my dear clever one?
She asks, menacing and direct. Jackson turns slowly to look up and face her. Her smile matures into a sadistic, hungry grin as she awaits his answer. Her unblinking, glowing white eyes petrified the poor boy. But he's somehow able to reply.
I wanted to know if you were real. If you really take our teeth at night. The kids at school think I'm a baby for still believing in the tooth fairy. I just wanted some kind of proof.
The tooth fairy? Is that what children call us?
She laughs to herself under her breath.
Yeah, I mean, you take our baby teeth, don't you?
Jackson questions, becoming less and less afraid.
We take all of your bones when you haven't need of them anymore. And when you die, we'll take you whole, my boy.
Her casually fiendish smile slashes at his psyche, and his courage begins to wane. Jackson chokes on his next breath. He drops his flashlight, which clatters loudly on the ground, and rolls away.
What do you mean, we?
Jackson asks with a pinch in his throat. He slowly backs up toward the open window.
We have many names.
The monster continues, slowly gliding toward him as he retreats.
The Banshee, the Raven Mocker, and now, the Tooth Fairy. Stay vigilant, my clever one. This meager offering of your teeny tooth may satiate me for the night, but we will return for a proper feast if you're not careful.
Jackson knew it was now or never. He lifts his Polaroid camera in front of him, pointing up as best as he can towards her. He presses the shutter button, and the flash dazzles him as it illuminates the entire room for a moment. As his eyes readjust to the dark, he finds he's all alone in the room. Without a sound, the gargantuan crunching bone woman had left him with more questions than answers. Removing his decoy basketball head from his pillow, he reclines in bed and excitedly waves the slowly developing photo in the air. He turns on his bedside lamp, making sure to check the corners of the room for any evidence that the Tooth Fairy may have left behind. Finally, he was able to make out the features of the portrait he took. He's looking right into the ominous eyes of the baseball player in the poster that was on the wall, just behind the Tooth Fairy. Jackson should have known she couldn't be photographed.
Ah, man.
Crestfallen, he tosses the photo away from him, his tongue jabbed at the socket where his tooth used to be. One of the last hallmarks of his youth had just been eviscerated right in front of him. And what did he have to show for it? He reached for the lamp just before something caught his eye at the window.
Wait, what's that?
It was swirling and flapping in the breeze. Jackson hopped out of bed and crept towards it. A huge punctured smile widened across his face and his eyebrows raised high upon his forehead. An enormous black feather was trapped in the windowsill. The beast had left it behind for him to show his friends as proof that he had almost caught the Tooth Fairy.
Now go to bed, boy.
Someone had called her, confirming she was still on the way. It was a very strange and awkward interaction, but she really needed this job. It would change everything for her. The sun was just rising over the skyline of Echo City, and yet she was already an hour late for the gig. She was exhausted, and it took her forever to find the venue, which turned out to be a mysterious rundown industrial warehouse, repurposed with a stark modern aesthetic. She was so tired she could barely remember the drive there as she threw the car in park, but she shook it off and hopped out of the car. She grabbed her things and ran inside as fast as she could. She was greeted by a large, heavily tattooed man who checked his list for her name. The clipboard looked comically small in his big, brawny hands.
Name?
He asked, peering over his designer sunglasses despite there being minimal sun.
Emily. Emily Rogers?
She smiled and posed as if it might help him locate her on the sheet quicker. He said, exchanging glances between her and his roster. He seemed to have found it, but instead of greeting her, he held out a black satin bag in front of her.
Phone,
he says barbarically, gesturing for her to relinquish her cell phone into the bag. She complies, conflicted and skeptical.
All right, head straight back,
he says, bored but satisfied. Emily felt a mix of exhilaration and nerves. Following the hastily handwritten signs on the walls, she galloped down a long hallway and finally found a large factory floor segmented into hair, makeup, and fitting areas. The air was electric with anticipation. Tall, thick black curtains partitioned the bustling fashion experts and assistants from the runway area. They were buzzing around like insects while they completed their assigned tasks. Although the dawn had just broken, none of them would be leaving until sunset that evening. She poked around the backstage area, searching for the designer she was hired to assist, the one and only Victor Douglas. She slid back the curtain to get a look at the runway. It was in an odd configuration. Everything looked movable. She noticed there were things suspended from the ceiling and wondered what they were used for. A large iron ring, big sharp hooks. Were these just left over from the factory when it was in operation? They looked new and untarnished. In a darkened back corner was an enormous fish tank filled with crystal clear water. It was at least 40 feet long and 10 feet tall. Perhaps these were all just decorations, eclectic props. Douglas was renowned for his avant-garde approach to fashion, and his stunning shows were one of a kind. Is that why he had a strict ban on phones? Maybe he wanted to keep this event exclusive for the buyers only. She suddenly started to feel nauseous. This just might be the most important job of her budding career. The selection process was oddly competitive. There were a lot of strange social exercises she had to perform in person, and seemingly irrelevant questions she had to answer. But she made the cut, beating out several other assistants with many more years of experience than she had. She felt hand-selected, and the criteria she met will always remain a mystery to her. Maybe they could sense that she would have killed for the chance to work with Douglas. He was a renegade of fashion, and the revolution would be live on the runway in just a few hours. Backstage, chaos reigned as makeup artists, hairstylists, and dressers prepared the models. She finally spotted Douglas, standing in a corner with his arms crossed. He was lean and older, and although he was a designer himself, he dressed very minimally. He was keyed into the energy and activities happening around him, and had a very severe look in his eyes. It was as if his life depended on the success of this show. Despite his slight unapproachability, Emily greeted him enthusiastically.
Hi, Mr. Douglas. I'm Emily Rogers,
she said, smiling. Though he didn't look at her, Douglas's lips finally curled up into a smile.
Ah, so you are. Are you ready for the wildest night of your life, Emily?
He asks, eerily calm.
Well, I sure hope so. I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity. Just, let me know what you need, and I'll take care of it.
That sounds marvelous, Emily. Why don't you start by getting out of my face for a while?
Taking his advice, she got herself acquainted with the backstage area, looking through the makeup and clothing racks to increase her familiarity with his work. They were surprisingly basic. Hanger after hanger of block, muted colors with stretchy commercial fabrics. Emily tried not to feel disappointed.
Oh my God, Sarah. It's been forever.
A voice corrupts her daydream and pulls her back to reality. A young blonde woman wearing a cardigan and jeans has her arms stretched out towards her.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not Sarah,
Emily said, politely declining the hug.
You're not Sarah Miller?
She said, incredibly confused.
Nope, I'm Emily, one of the personal assistants.
She waves sweetly at the stranger as she introduces herself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm Jessica Tucci. I'm, here to watch the show,
she said, though there seemed to be more behind it all.
Great, enjoy.
Emily said, attempting to slowly back out of the conversation.
Wait.
Jessica erupted in a plea.
I just had a few questions. You're working with Victor Douglas, right?
I probably can't help you. I've only met him today. Are you a journalist or something?
After a moment, the woman agreed with Emily.
Sure. Yes, a journalist. I just wanted to know what we might expect tonight. Anything innovative?
Your guess is as good as mine, Jessica.
Emily says, feeling threatened and ambushed.
Oh, okay, I understand. It's just, I've been following this designer for a while and I wanted to see his work in person. The vibes are a little off around here, though, don't you think? Well, anyway, sorry for mistaking you earlier. You just look so much like my friend from high school.
Emily forced a smile and returned to her vague responsibilities backstage. She found a disheveled table of items, including baseball bats, axes, and swords. They were probably going to be used to punctuate the story the clothes were trying to tell. While she perused more random designs, props, and set pieces, Emily was distracted by a group of models sitting in makeup chairs in front of mirrors. Each was perfect in their own way to Emily. Their eyes were closed while the makeup artists situated their final looks for their walks. Douglas's modeling coach stood behind them, speaking in a smoky, soothing voice. She was gorgeous, no doubt a retired model herself. She walked up and down the space around them, her heels emitting a rhythmic popping sound. Her curiosity piqued, and Emily edged closer to hear what she was saying.
Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, you are amazing because you look amazing. You are free and in complete control of your body. You are capable of the impossible.
The woman intoned.
You are strong, stunning, and prepared for anything. You are invincible. You are the moment, and you are the main attraction.
Emily watched the model smile and nod, looking refreshed and blissful. Emily shivered, feeling an uneasy chill down her spine. Their makeup was ready, and they filed orderly away from the space and into their next station, only a few minutes until showtime. As Emily looked around the area, Douglas's eyes in the corner caught her own. He smiled, his gaze intense and brooding. She quickly looked away, joining the others at the clothing racks for their final fittings. The MC, a DJ from the city, was given the signal to begin the show. The lights dimmed, and the sound from the subwoofers vibrated the bodies of all in attendance. Emily batted the curtain to the main stage lightly so that she could spy on the crowd without detection. People from all over the world were shifting excitedly in their chairs, whispering to each other behind their show programs. It was Echo City Fashion Week, where designers gathered to showcase their latest collections. Closing out the show this year was Victor Douglas, the most anticipated designer of the season. Known for pushing boundaries, the enigmatic innovator promised a spectacle unlike any other. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers.
Welcome everyone to Echo City Fashion Week. Tonight is the final night, and it'll be a show for the ages. Before the night is over, you will witness death-defying catwalks, gravity-defying poses, and breathtaking fashion. Nothing you are about to witness will be seen anywhere else in the world. Designer Victor Douglas cordially invites you to experience Threads. Enjoy the show!
Pulsing, electrifying music spilled into the room, and the first wave of female models began gliding down the runway. They had a fluid, supernatural grace. They were dressed in vibrant cocktail dresses, while axes, clubs, bike chains, and brass knuckles swung carelessly in their grasp. The audience gasped in awe. Each one balanced precariously in heels that were comprised of just a single 4-inch stiletto spike under the arch, spinning gracefully on them at the end of the runway. The audience clapped lightly, delighted with the design but were unsure of the presentation. Emily poked her head out to get a look at the reactions of the onlookers. Just then, a loud snap, followed by a stumbling, thunderous thud rang out. A girl had already fallen on the runway, dropping her axe, but she recovered and pressed on. Emily stretched her neck to see over the heads of the audience, and she became sick to her stomach. The fallen model's ankle was clearly broken as the bone was protruding, but she kept walking, maintaining that mesmerizing poise with the joy and satisfaction of walking in Victor Douglas heels. Her ankle, however, was mangled and bent at a right angle, each step deepening the wound. At the end of the catwalk, the model winked at those in the front row, their expressions of horror not fazing her. As she made it backstage, staff members swooped her up and rushed her away from the area. Emily is aghast, her heart thumping in her chest harder and louder than the music. She looked over to Douglas, whose expression hadn't changed since she met him. He looked at multiple TV monitors, checking for blemishes with the stage and setup, but the critically injured woman didn't seem to inspire any concern. The next wave of models, fitted in alluring, sheer, pastel-colored formal dresses, came swinging in on metal hooks suspended by chains from the ceiling. They were pierced through the skin of their shoulder blades and looked serene and confident in the face, smiling into the crowd below them as they swung by. The crowd gasped and screeched at the sight initially, but their shock eventually transformed into wild applause. Backstage, Emily's unease grew. These feats were too perfect and too dangerous to be performed without error. As far as she knew, these models weren't professional stunt people. She approached Mia, one of the veteran models, during a short break in the show.
Mia, how are they doing this? Aren't they scared of getting hurt?
Mia looked at her blankly, her eyes glazed.
We have the best coach in the world. We trust her, and we devour the runway each time.
A single glossy rogue tear threatened to drop from her charcoal-lined eye, which she wiped away quickly.
Are you okay?
Emily asked, careful not to offend her.
I'm just sensitive to the makeup is all.
Emily frowned.
But what if something goes wrong?
Nothing goes wrong,
Mia replied, her voice harsh.
We're perfect.
And Mia meant it. The other models swirled and dazzled in the backstage area, engaging with each other only when necessary and ready to walk on stage at a moment's notice. They were beyond focused. The break was almost over, and she saw the larger staff members wheeling in the large fish tank, leaving it dead center in the main stage area. She wondered what Jessica, the journalist, would think of all of this. She spotted her backstage, cornered by the modeling coach. Jessica laughed nervously with her as the coach swirled her fingers around expressively as she spoke. Emily waited patiently for them to wrap up their conversation, picking over the table of snacks. Suddenly, Jessica walked away and towards the door to the exit. As she passed by Emily, she slipped on a small, neglected puddle of blood left behind from the broken ankle.
Whoopsies,
She said, giggling at Emily, finding her footing again.
Careful, Emily. There's a little bit of blood there. No running at the pool, right?
She dashed down the hallway and Emily never saw her again. At least she got her name right. The DJ returns to the mic and informs everyone the final acts of the show are about to start. The audience rushed to their seats. They didn't want to miss a single thing. Emily had to wonder if any of them were still interested in buying these designs anymore. The stunts alone seemed to have sold them on the Douglas brand. A hook ladder was added to the side of the fish tank, as well as one inside it. Emily made the mistake of standing near the entrance of the runway, and beautiful swimsuit-clad models barreled right through her to get to their marks. She nearly fell over. Right on cue, they strutted up to the ladder and waited their turn to climb up and into the tank. They smiled as they slipped gracefully under the water, their bare feet planted flatly on the bottom of the tank. They started to walk around the inside of the tank as if the glass box was a runway inside. They smiled and posed at the people outside of it, flexing and being cheeky. Their hair was suspended in a ghostly way in the water as they walked and posed. Emily was impressed. They didn't seem to be struggling or showing any signs of fear. Emily caught herself holding her breath with them, curious as to how well she would do. But as she did, she found it impossible to match their breath support. She was sure they had to have some sort of oxygen mask on, but they couldn't. They just had swimwear on. Eventually, some of them, though still smiling, started jerking, grabbing at their chests. But they kept walking and posing, playfully waving at their captive audience, who were haunted by what they were seeing. Emily whipped her head around to find Douglas at his usual spot, looking intently at the TV monitors, ensuring his garments looked perfect underwater. He seemed pleased as punch. She had to do something if no one else would. The table of weapons would work. She had to grab the bat and smash the fish tank open. She couldn't stand by and watch this tragedy unfold. She had only just grabbed the baseball bat when the modeling coach grabbed her hand. She slowly shook her head at Emily, boring deep into her eyes. Emily had the overwhelming urge to stand down. She dropped the bat and backed away from it. The coach smiled, pleased, and pulled Emily by the shoulders to watch the rest of the show. After a few more tense moments of watching the near-drowning models, one by one, they climbed the ladder inside the tank and strutted soaking wet to an absorbent area behind the curtain. If any of them needed medical attention, they didn't show it. Emily was shocked at the lengths to which these models were willing to go to walk in this show. It couldn't be worth it. At any rate, the show had to go on. It was time for the finale. The tank had been replaced with a small landscape of sand, and Mia, barefoot in an incredible studded leather ensemble, prepared her pose at the entrance, waiting for her cue. Staff members swiftly entered the stage area with barrels of tinkling material rustling inside. It was coarse, sparkling glass bits. They inverted the barrels and poured out their contents in a straight line as if to create a dangerous, macabre runway leading right up to Mia. Emily's stomach lurched the half-eaten sandwich and watermelon from lunch. She tapped her foot, attempting to ease her anxiety. But if this was the finale, she knew something unbelievable was about to happen. The music cranked loudly. There was no reason for anyone to be able to hear each other over it. All eyes would be on Mia. She was the moment. She drew in a breath and lifted her chin, the light catching her flawless, glowing skin. The large, gorgeous, diamond-encrusted sunglasses she wore swallowed her face whole. She began to walk. The soles of her feet crunched over the glass shards. But her pace and her gait never wavered. Her hips flicked left and right. Her strong thighs flexed with every step, and her arms swished elegantly as she walked. Her long, flowing hair flapped perfectly in the air, dusting the back of her black leather jacket. She finally met the end of the row of glass, a faint red trail left in her wake. No one spoke a word or made a sound. They were in euphoria in light of the mortal peril the model just put herself through, all in the name of fashion. But it wasn't over just yet. Out of the corner of everyone's eye, a large metal ring descended from above and seemed to be dripping with something. As it reached Mia, she delightfully clutched it in her hands and sat inside of it, like an acrobat would. She removed her sunglasses and tossed them playfully into the crowd. Her smile beamed. Raising an eyebrow, she looked up at the source from where the ring came, just as a bright flash lit up the rafters. A cascade of flames traveled down the chain connected to the ring, igniting everything it touched. It finally reached Mia, and the entire ring lit up with a roar. Mia used her toes to spin herself quickly inside the ring. She appeared trapped inside a terrifying vortex of lawless flames that desperately kissed Mia's skin. But still, she posed and pouted glamorously. It was hard to tell if she was engulfed, or if she was truly defying death. Just as with everything else in Douglas's show, there was one more surprise. She was suddenly hoisted up and over the audience, illuminating the dark industrial room like a fire-breathing dragon. She was swung behind a curtain and out of sight, presumably extinguished safely somewhere nearby. The audience side-eyed each other, unable to decide whether to clap for or cope with whatever it was they just witnessed. All the available models took their final walk upon the catwalk of broken glass, clapping and smiling. Victor finally makes his appearance, taking a bow at the end of the catwalk. The crowd cheered and stood up on their feet, some even on their chairs. For some reason, seeing the man behind it all left them disinterested in any explanations, and grateful for the chance to be a part of Douglas's latest fashion show experience. But Emily decided she needed answers. She was nearly in tears, overwhelmed by emotion. She looked around at everyone else, who seemed to be congratulating each other on a job well done. Some of the swimwear models, their lips still blue from their underwater walk, smiled and high-fived. Then her eyes landed on the modeling coach in the shadowed corner. She was teetering her heeled shoe on the floor, fidgeting with her thin necklace chain. The realization hit her like a lightning bolt. Her heels, her hands, her voice. Was she hypnotizing the models? Was she making them Douglas's puppets? It might have seemed crazy, but it's the only thing she could think of. Something sinister was going on. She could just feel it. As soon as she could, Emily confronted Douglas after the show.
She's hypnotizing the models. That's how they're doing those dangerous stunts.
Douglas's expression darkened, but then he smiled, a chilling, predatory smile.
Very perceptive, Emily. And so what? My shows are legendary. No one needs to know how or why. No one cares. These models are all safe under her control. They know what they signed up for.
It's wrong. They don't even know what's happening to them.
Emily protested. Douglas leaned forward, his eyes pouring into hers.
So go ahead, Sarah. Expose me. No one will believe you.
My name is Emily, all right? Emily!
Emily's heart raced. She knew he was right. She needed proof. Otherwise, she could kiss her career goodbye with a wild accusation like this.
Oh, is it?
Douglas questioned calmly.
Are you sure you're Emily Rogers?
He smiled darkly, baring his teeth. What was he asking? She would know her own name, wouldn't she? Although, it was strange how everyone kept calling her Sarah. like some kind of running inside joke. She heard a faint popping sound in her ears. It sounded like high heels easing down a runway. A calmness washed over her. Her skin was invaded by goosebumps. How could she not realize?
But why me too?
Emily asked in despair, realizing she may in fact have been this Sarah all along.
As a control measure.
Douglas admits freely.
We needed to know they were buying what we were selling without knowing our little secret. You helped us see it all through their eyes. And you did wonderfully, Sarah.
Then the voice of the modeling coach engulfed her entire consciousness.
But now it's time for you to wake up.
Don't you
In
dare.
3,
Stop.
2, 1.
Mr. Douglas, it was a pleasure working with you. Gosh, today has been a blur. I can barely remember a thing.
With you as well, Sarah. I'll send a letter of recommendation in the morning.
Wow, thank you. That would be amazing.
Well, you've earned it. Now get out of my face.
Sarah left the building soon after, reclaiming her phone at the door.
Good night, Sarah. Drive safe.